first video of 2025, we are finally going to complete making a deck for every hero and every faction for Altered TCG. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to TCG Madness. My name is Philip. Happy New Year to everybody. And yeah, for the first video of 2025, we are finally going to complete making decks for every hero and every faction for Altered TCG. So real quick right now, while I have your attention, please do me the big favor, hit that like button. If you're new, consider hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to also hit that notification bell so you guys never miss when I drop a video. Comment too if you guys agree or disagree with the deck choices that I made, that I did for the deck itself. Also too, like all other videos, we will go through the hero, then we'll go through every card in the actual deck itself. So if you want to pause right now and take a good look at it, you can. Then we're going to jump into the stats, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the sideboard. So if you want to take this deck in a different direction, which is such the beauty of Altered TCG that you get to do that, because like a lot of card games, usually there's just one direction, which we call the meta. For Altered TCG, there's different directions you can take with this deck. So I did create a sideboard for you if you want to take the deck in a different direction. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into things, starting off with the hero. This is Gulrang Tocsin. This is the Ordra's hero, of course. 2 reserve, 2 landmarks, pretty staple right there. It does state when you create a token character, it gains 1 boost, which, you know, if you know anything about Ordra's, that is excellent, because Ordra's all cares about is just making a bunch of tokens. So just that, if this hero just said that right there, this would be an amazing hero. But it does go on to say, if you have less than 8 mana orbs, boosted tokens you control are defenders. Their expeditions can advance during dusk. So basically with this deck, you're playing a lot of defense. And if you don't know anything about Ordra's, there's not a whole lot of ramp for this deck at all, actually. So I do hope for the next set we do get some ramp options for Ordra's, because then that would make this hero a really good candidate, because I do believe that this hero is the least played hero out of all the heroes and out of all the factions. It's this hero right here that is the least played. So let's go ahead and jump into the deck itself. So that's the hero. Now we're going to jump into the deck. Again, if you want to pause right now, take a good look at it. And again, if you want to comment down below, agree, disagree. This is, to me, the best I can make out of this deck. This deck is really hard to put together because, again, it doesn't really have the necessary support it really needs. I mean, Ordra's can make a bunch of tokens. That's the easy part. It's that 8-man orbs. If there was some kind of ramp, any ramp at all, even if it was just 1 or 2 cards, it would make this hero a lot better. But here's what we went with. So starting off, we have the rare version, if it wants to pull up on my screen. There we go. All right, starting off with the characters. We have the rare version of Jeanne d'Arc. It's a 5/5, 2 across the board. When I leave the expedition zone, create 2 Ordra's recruits soldier tokens in each of your expeditions. So that's really good there. We get to create 2 in each expedition. I really like that. It's pretty much a staple for Ordra's. Definitely need this card as well. We also have the regular version of Jeanne d'Arc for a 4/4, 2 across the board. Create an Ordra's soldier token in each of your expeditions. Not as good as the rare, but that's okay. That's why we go with a nice split of 2 and 3s. Next up, we have 3 copies of the rare Ratatasker. It's a 1/3. It's a really good card for Ordra's, actually. 1/3, 1 across the board. When you play it at your expedition, create 2 Ordra's soldier tokens in my expedition. So you're going to get a good boost of tokens, which is really good for your hero. Definitely a card you really want to play late. Of course, unless you're in a pinch, you need to play a little bit of defense, play him out of your reserve, definitely. Not a card you probably want to drop early because you don't want to accidentally get sabotaged and lose this card, so just keep that in mind. Next up, we have another couple of 1-drops. We have Paper Herald 1/1 for 0/0/1, and we also have them because you can play them out of your reserve for a quick action to create a token, which is really good. So this Paper Herald actually very underrated with this deck. We also have 3 copies of Ordra's Trooper for a 1/1 for 1s across the board. Pretty staple there. It's good for your 1-drops, just to give you a nice good curve. Next up, we also have 3 copies of the rare Ordra's Cadets, 2 2s, 1 across the boards. When you play out of your hand or out of your reserve, create a Ordra's Recruit Soldier token in your other expedition. This guy does a lot of work for you, so again, we just care about making tokens. That's why this deck is the army of tokens. You want to create tokens and then hopefully late game get that 8+ mana orbs and just start dropping big bodies and boost them up. Next up, we also have 2 copies of the Monolith Rune Scribe. This is the rare version for a 2/2 for 1/2/2. When you play out of your hand, if you control a token, resupply. I like this card because, again, resupply, very good. And if you notice too, Ordra's Cadets, Ratatasker, Paper Herald, all good targets that when you play something out of your reserve, you're going to get some kind of bonus. Ordra's Cadets, it doesn't matter if it's out of your hand or your reserve. So there's a really good card right here to get that resupply ability. Next up, we have 3 copies of the Monolith Legate. This is the regular version. This is the 2/2 for a 2/1/2. When my expedition fails to move forward during dusk, Sabotage after rest. So again, you're going to get a nice ability of sabotaging your opponent, and that's going to happen a lot with this deck too, because again, you have to have 8 or more mana orbs for any of your tokens that are boosted to even matter. So, you know, you're playing a lot of defense with this deck, a lot of defense. Next up, we have 3 copies of the regular Ordris Gatekeeper for a 3/3 1/3/1. When you play it out of your hand or your reserve, create a soldier token in your other expedition. Again, it's going to do a lot of work for you. Next up, we have Ordris Spy. This is the rare version. We have 3 copies of this in the deck. It's a 3/2 for a 2/2/2. This is a very, very underrated card in the deck, and it's definitely, in my opinion, a staple for this deck, because it's going to do 2 things. When you play it out of your hand, you're going to sabotage. Sabotaging, always great. Then when you play it out of your reserve, you're going to create a token in the target, in the expedition that this goes in. Again, very underrated card. So when you're playing out of your hand or out of your reserve, you're getting some kind of added bonus with Ordris Spy. Very good card, definitely a staple. So that is it for the characters. Next up, we have spells. Starting off, we have Charge 2/2. Characters you control gain a boost. Again, this is also another card you can do 2 things with. You can play it late game when your boosted characters actually matter, especially for the tokens. You can also play this early on too, to just get an extra advantage for your defense. I only went with 2 copies. I don't think you need any more than that. I think if you put any more, you run the risk of bricking your hand. You don't want to do that. Next up, we have 3 copies of Teamwork Training. Send to reserve target character with hand cost X or less, where X is the number of characters you control. With an Ordris deck, you're building a lot of tokens. This card can definitely get out of control. Again, it's also your only other source of removal, so pretty good card there. Definitely need at least 3 copies. Anything with removal, I do think you need at least 3 copies for it, unless you have a secondary choice. Next up, we have Sticky Note Seals as a 3/3. You can choose one, send to reserve target character with a hand cost of 4 or more, or discard target permanent with hand or 4 or more. Again, another form of removal. Just 2 copies of this, because again, we don't want to brick our hand. And then last but not least, we have Open the Gates, a 5/6. Create 2 Ordris soldier tokens in each of your expeditions. Just 2 copies of that one too. Again, this is also going to be your late play game right here. Again, once you have 8 or more, all these tokens are all going to become boosted, so we definitely want that. For permanents, I went with 2 different types of permanents, and this is where I went a different choice with the deck. Again, I always like to put my little spin on the deck. Again, you can go in a different direction, so if you don't like this card and you want to have different types of rares, you can remove this from your deck and go in a different direction. Absolutely would recommend that. But for this deck, I did go with Brass Bug Hub. It says, I gain 3 Keylon counters. At noon, you can pay 1, spend 1 of my counters to create a Brass Bug 2/2/2 robot token in target expedition. The reason why I go with this is for 2 things. Number 1, it's a very cheap permanent, and you're getting a better token out of it. The second reason I did go with this, because if you read your hero, it just says when you create a token. It doesn't say what type of token. It just says create a token. It gains 1 boost. So this thing right here is going to create Brass Bug tokens, and your hero will boost those Brass Bug tokens. So you want to drop this early and kind of forget about it, and then when you have late game, start spending those Keylon counters and boosting up your Brass Bugs, because you're getting 3/3/3s for paying 1 out of this. You gain 3 counters, you already pay 2, no matter if it's out of your hand or out of your reserve, so you're going to get this ability. So it's good for early game if you want to stymie your opponent with some good defense. It also states too, late game, it really benefits you to start dropping these Brass Bugs, because you're going to get 3s across the board. That with Charge, you're going to look at a bunch of 4/4s for paying 1 Keylon counter. That's really good value right here. So highly recommend putting that card in your deck. It definitely catches your opponent off guard late game. The other thing I also went with is no brainer. The other permanent we went with is Ordris Carry 3/3 at noon, create a soldier token in your companion expedition. Again, this is pretty much a staple for all Ordris decks. I did not go with the rare, I went with the regular version because it's a 3/3 rare, a little bit cheaper. That's the deck itself. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. The stats are not pretty for this deck at all. It basically heavies on the 1s, 2s, and 3s for both hand cost and reserve cost. Lows, 4s, and 5s. We only got 1 6, so pretty good as far as the curve cost. Attributes, not good. 32, 37, and 37. Again, pretty balanced in the mountain and ocean. What you're banking on, though, is creating a bunch of these tokens, going wide with your board, boosting those tokens, and then outvaluing your opponent with just a bunch of 1/1s. Again, this is the reason why this deck is not very popular, and this is why it's the least played hero. 9 spells, 5 permanents, 26 characters. So that's the actual deck itself. Again, comment down below what you guys think about the deck. This will finally conclude all the deck builds for all heroes. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard before we get out of here. So if you want to take this deck in a different direction, here's what I recommend. If you want to take this deck in a different direction, here are a couple of cards I would recommend swapping in and out with, and what you want to take out, totally up to you. First off, we're going to go with the rare version of the Haven Trainee. It's a 2/4 for a 3/1/1. If you play it out of your reserve, create an order soldier token in each of your expeditions. So if you want more bodies, more token generators, definitely this guy would definitely go in the deck. Also, too, he would give you some better stats because he is at 3/1/1, 3 in the force. So you would get some better stats there as well. He also is pretty cost efficient for just that 2-drop right there. Then he goes to your expedition, but you have to, not your expedition, goes to your reserve. Then you have to pay the 4 to come out. So for paying for 4, you're going to get 3/1/1 as well as 2 different tokens in each of your expeditions. So pretty good value there. The other card, if you wanted to go in a different direction, I would definitely recommend, a little more draw engines for this deck as well. I would definitely go with Baba Yaga, the rare version. This is a 3/2 for a 3/2/2. So you're getting better stats, and when you play out of your hand, you're going to draw some cards. Drawing some cards with this deck, especially, very, very good. Next up, I have a rare version of this spell. This is Open the Gate. So again, if you want to swap out and get a better spell in there, definitely this would be recommended. For a 5/5, create 4 Ordress soldier tokens, distributed as many, choose among any number of target expeditions. So you can put 3 in 1, you can do 2 in 2, you can do all 4 in 1, doesn't matter. Definitely a pretty good card that I would recommend putting in. The reason why I didn't go with this version though to begin with in the actual deck is just that 5/5 is a little too cost efficient when you're trying to outvalue. So when you finally get to that 8, you want to use all 8 mana to really just go as wide as possible. Spending 5 to just get 4 when I think there's better options. For 4, you can get Haven Trainee and you can create 2 right there. So you're getting a body and plus 2 tokens that those will get boosted. Granted, with your hero, all of these tokens will get boosted. So for 5 mana, for 4s, you're going to get 2s across the boards. So just keep that in mind. Just didn't think it was necessary for the actual deck itself. And then if you wanted more draw engines, definitely for permanents, you would go with Colonic Generator. 4/4, paying 1 to draw a card is not bad at all, especially for late games when you really need to search through that deck to really get what you want. And then last but not least, I did go with this as well. So again, if you wanted to take out the Brass Bug Hub, this is also a great card to put in there for it, honestly. This is a Grand Endeavor. It's 6/6. And it gives your spells tough 2, so if they're going to target you with some spells or any other abilities, it's going to cost 2 or more, so that's pretty good there. So it's going to give yourself a little bit more protection, which is good for Ordress, because if you go wide, you're acceptable to basically all board wipes like Kraken's Wrath and stuff like that. So to protect yourself a little bit from that, pretty good there. But really what you really like about this card right here is at noon, target expedition moves forward 1 region. You're playing a lot of defense with this deck. If you slide this card in the deck as well, so maybe if you take out Brass Bug Hub and you slide this in there, you can just have the advantage that way of just constantly advancing without actually, caring, about that 8 or more mana orb. So if all your cards have Defender, okay, so be it. I got this, at least I can advance with 1 expedition. So definitely a card that I would highly recommend. If you wanted to swap out the Brass Bug, I would definitely put this in there as well. And definitely a card I would want to see around, either my opening hand or at least in the first couple of days, which if you do put this in your deck, you definitely want more draw engines because you're going to want to see this card. So this way you can start making up that advantage, because you playing defense with this deck is going to obviously it's going to happen a lot. So you're not advancing. You're not really caring about advancing. You're just stopping your opponent. At least with this card, you'll be able to stop your opponent hopefully and also advance as well. So getting that 2-for-1 deal, pretty good. That's going to do it for this deck. I hope you guys have enjoyed me building all decks for all the heroes and all the factions. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. I really would appreciate it for nothing else. If you're new, consider hitting the subscribe button. I also have some very good news coming around the corner here about Altered TCG, so stick around for that. And again, please hit that notification bell so you guys never miss when I drop a video. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. See you guys next time.